Your brother lives over there. You live here. Two different states. So, where are you supposed to move your mom?
Hi, and welcome to Desperately Seeking Senior Living and our State by State series. In this series, we're exploring assisted living, retirement living, memory care, and so much more. Cost and services very often differ state to state. So whether you're a family member beginning your search or you're working in the senior living industry, this series is going to give you an overview of senior living in your state. Don't forget to check out show notes for local links and more about our guests. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Valerie Lynn, and in this episode, we are heading to the Show Me State of Missouri. Missouri holds a very special place in my heart because it's where my son, Caleb, and his beautiful family lives. And I am very excited to welcome Erin Dwyer of Senior Care Authority back to the show. Erin has been an advocate for seniors in the St. Louis area for years. She's even advocated for families at the state government level. And you may have seen her on the road, where she helps families determine if mom or dad is still okay to drive. Erin has spent years helping families and is a wealth of knowledge. So let's go to Missouri. Welcome to Desperately Seeking Senior Living, a podcast for sons, daughters, grandkids, spouses, and all caregivers who suddenly find themselves tangled in the search for senior living and care. If you like today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and check out our doable download in today's show notes for a printable summary of the show and a bonus tip. Well, Erin, thank you so much for coming back to the show. And if you are not a regular listener of Desperately Seeking Senior Living, the podcast, then you may not know that Erin has been on the show a couple of times. But I'm going to put links to those episodes and show notes so you can, check those out. You are one of the first in this state by state series, and I'm so excited about this series because every state is a little bit different. And I operate out of Washington State, but I was born and raised in Illinois. I have family in Missouri, which my son Caleb.
Yep.
It's so cool.
Sweet grandbaby.
Yes, that sweet grandbaby. And so I really wanted to do this series just because I'm so passionate about educating families. And very often, and I know this has probably happened to you, we have family members in different states. And so I have had a family where one brother lived here in Washington, and I'm talking to him, and then a sister lives in Chicago, and they're literally having the conversation. So, Valerie, we're trying to decide if we're going to move our mom. Did I say mom or dad? In my example, I don't even remember.
Good, Mom.
Okay, we're going to move. They're like trying to decide. Yeah, we'll go with mom. They're trying to decide, are we going to move mom from Washington State to Chicago, to Illinois? And I literally, in that situation, because I have family in Illinois, I knew the answer. And the answer is that, listen, if you think your mom is going to run out of money in a year or two, don't move her to Illinois because the options are so limited when you run out of funds. But I was able to have that conversation with them. And so it just prompted me to, you know what, let's do this. Let's put together a series state by state so that we can help families in Missouri. So that we can help those families, and they can easily click, find this on YouTube in the playlist. So, Erin, oh my gosh, tell us about Missouri and maybe we should start there with the financial aspect because Missouri is similar to Illinois. There are limited options when you are running out of money. So let's just start there. What do you do in Missouri if you only have a year left of funding and your mom or dad needs assisted living?
And we're actually worse than Illinois. So there's a waiver program.
Not that we're comparing, yeah.
So yeah, not that we're comparing. But yes, that's the challenge. There's this huge.
It is true.
Where, yes, when you are low on funds, there's not a lot of options. So we do not, in Missouri, we do not accept Medicaid as a form of payment for assisted living or memory care. So that means you have two options. You have long-term skilled nursing. You'd have to find a Medicaid, certified Medicaid bed, or stay home and get some Medicaid home care. But that's not 24/7 care. And there are fewer and fewer Medicaid home care companies anymore
Oh
because the
no.
reimbursement rate is so poor. So
Ugh.
I've seen it be possible, but it will take a village though. It would have to take, neighbors or daughters giving up time to help take care of mom, plus the Medicaid home care, plus maybe hospice, adult day, and maybe private home care to be able to bridge that gap. So
Let me
uh,
ask you this. Does Medicaid in Missouri pay for a family member to be the caregiver?
correct. Yes. So we have a
Okay.
CDS program where, again, you have to go through a licensed agency, but you can designate the power of attorney or the client can designate who they want to do the caregiving. So, say the daughter cannot afford to give up her job and just, be with mom all the time. So, this might be a stopgap where the daughter could be paid through the CDS program on Medicaid. She can get paid a salary. Now, it's not huge, but it's something to take care of mom. But yes, you'd have to go through the agency that, accepts CDS or is it a CDS licensed agency. That's a
And do you
possibility.
do you have any idea what that amount is that they
Off the
pay?
top of my head, I am not sure. No, because I've yet to have a family that went that route.
Okay.
It was either Medicaid home care, private home care, or they moved into a community. So I've never had someone go through CDS. Yes, anyway.
Okay. Okay. And the home care, it's not very much. Do you have it like do you know about how many hours per week? It depends on the assistance that's needed, but like you're
Correct.
saying, they're not going to pay for 24/7.
Right. The most I've seen was a gentleman. It was actually for his grandmother. He was the power of attorney out of state. He did some really, really great research and navigation. He got his grandmother, who lived in a regular apartment, 6 days a week of Medicaid home care. So they got
Whoa.
a shore worker. Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm impressed. But that is rare.
Wow.
She was, really advanced in age. She was like in her 90s, almost no money. All of it went towards rent and medication. So she was also the spouse of a veteran, I believe. Yes, she was a spouse of a veteran. And so he had tapped into all those resources. But yes, she was able to get Medicaid home help for 6 days out of the week. So there was only
Wow.
one day they had to figure out the care
Wow.
then with the
That's
help.
amazing. That's
Amazing.
amazing.
That's
I
rare though. That's a rare case.
Yeah, and this is also where, just on a side note, this is where technology can really help in those situations. In these states where you might have to stay home with in-home care because you can't find a bed, for straight
Yes.
Medicaid or whatever the situation is. There is some really great technology out there. I'll put a link in show notes to that too. But so, okay. So what if, so this is, this is tough, right? So my daughter-in-law, as you probably know, is a paramedic in
Mhm.
St. Louis and the area. So she's like, yeah, those skilled nursing facilities, they're not all that great. Oh my gosh, I hate hearing that. But honestly, I hear that all over. It's not just Missouri. So
No.
what are those like? What are the skilled nursing facilities that take Medicaid? Can you just paint a picture for us?
Yes. And I tell families that you do get what you pay for a little bit. So I prefer the communities or facilities that have both. They have private pay beds and they have Medicaid beds. And they always tell me that the staff does not know which bed is certified what, which I think is good.
Mhm.
But most
That's a
of those
good
places
point.
that accept,
That's a really good point.
yeah,
I
you
didn't
don't
think of
want to have a
that.
big sign that says I'm Medicaid, so please give me less care. That would be awful. So
Wow.
the dual certified beds, and also the ones that take private pay, they tend to have, in my opinion, I see they're cleaner,
Mhm.
happier staff, better care. But the caveat to that is they often don't take Medicaid day one. So there's a waiting period where you have to pay
Oh.
privately because there's usually not a Medicaid bed open. So if you have the funds to pay for 6 to 8 months, possibly or more of private pay before your loved one can get on in the Medicaid bed, that's preferable. If you're in the process of getting on Medicaid or Medicaid pending, there are some facilities that will accept that. But I always say, you have to go and tour. They're all different, and you just have to go in there and see the staff and see, the cleanliness and that. There are some, decent Medicaid, facilities, but you have to go in and check them out yourself. But we also look at the ratings. So we look at the CMS guidelines, the ratings, we look at the state reports. So that's all things that we share with the family. So just because you walk in and, maybe the smell is not so alluring, but you see that the care, there's a lot of caregivers and they're attentive. Maybe you can overlook, the fact that the carpets are from the 1970s or something like that, but the care is really good. It's not going to be chandeliers. And so to me, I'm
It's
like,
so true.
the chandelier can't provide the care for grandpa.
That's
Just
right.
remember that.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Okay. You hit on so many really good points, and I want to make sure that we get to them all. So, I mean, the first thing you mentioned is you get what you pay for. And I often say that about the straight Medicaid places, some of them in Washington state. I'm like, you might want to bring a can of paint,
Mhm.
to this
Right.
home, but the care is really good. And so, I think that is, really important to really, when you're touring places, to try to be present and interact with as many of the staff as you can, and also watch the staff and listen to the staff. How are they interacting with others? And so I do think that that is really important. And then you were talking about the spend down. That's what we call it. That's the industry term for you might need a little bit of money up front. And you mentioned the 6 to 8 months. And so that's also known as private pay funding.
Right.
This
Or
is
more.
where, right, or more.
Some are 12
Well,
months. Yep.
that's a right now. Yeah, that we'll get to that for sure because there are community. Yeah. Other different, actually, no, in Missouri, they're not. You guys don't have any assisted living communities that do a spend down. Do you? I don't think you do.
No.
And yeah, okay. Well, anyway,
Unless
so
you're in, let me clarify that. Unless you are in a CCRC or a continuum of care retirement community in an assisted living, then where they have skilled nursing that they accept Medicaid, then you could be in that assisted living
okay,
apartment.
we'll circle back to that then. Okay,
Yes,
we
that
will
would be the
circle back
caveat.
to that. Okay.
Yes.
But so that the spend down, this is what is so interesting to me. And this is where I think a lot of families get into trouble. That spend down is directly correlated to planning ahead.
Correct.
And so many families don't, they just don't plan ahead. And we don't want to think about getting older, our parents getting older, our grandparents getting older. I mean, this is not a fun, nobody wants to come talk to us. This is not a
No.
fun subject. But if you're listening and you feel like finances could be an issue, then that's kind of what we're saying, right? Is in the state of Missouri, you're going to be better served if you can plan 6 months to a year ahead of time. So let's talk monthly fee. What is this monthly amount that families need to try to aim for to plan ahead?
Well, for an assisted living, we're seeing about 4,500 to about 10,000 per month. And we're talking about Missouri as a whole. St. Louis is going to be more expensive than, of course, rural Missouri.
Mhm.
But skilled nursing, that's 8,000 to 15,000 a month.
Wow.
So if you think about that, if you are already in a skilled nursing and you're just biding your time until a Medicaid bed opens up, can you swing 8 to 10 grand a month for 6 to 9 months at least?
Okay,
So
so there's your takeaway. So there's sort of your, gosh, that's almost like an average of 10,000 a month.
I think that's safe. Hmm.
So when you're looking at, and there's a couple of ways you can do that. And oh, that was the other thing I didn't want to forget. You did mention the VA
Hmm.
benefits. So there is something called VA aid and attendance if your loved one was a veteran or married to a veteran. And by the way, that can't be like the first of many marriages or the first of a few
Correct.
marriages, right? It has to be the
The only one.
current, the current or the
Yep.
widow,
Correct.
in that situation. And of course, there are different things that you have to meet, different criteria for that benefit. However, that is something that can help you as you're budgeting. And then, of course, if your mom or dad or grandparent, if they own their home, then this is something else that you can take a look at. And then investments and all. So most of the folks that are going to be probably in this situation are probably not going to have the investments, but they might have the home to sell
Right.
to help
Right.
them get to that spend down amount. So, okay, so you mentioned the CCRC communities, and I want to get back to those. So we have those here in Washington as well. The CCRCs they have retirement living, assisted living, memory care, and many of them also have skilled nursing facilities. These are very often, for us, we kind of have two camps, but very often they're run by um, a church organization a lot of
A lot
times.
of times
So,
are as well.
yeah, yeah, tell us about the CCRCs in Missouri.
So some are for profit and some are non for profit. We have several. So when you're thinking about a CCRC or continuum of care retirement community, you're thinking of a very large campus. Um, the ones that I know of, all of the independent livings have a buy-in for the independent living. So you're putting down a large chunk of money, but it's like a long-term care policy, basically. If you don't have one, it's a life care plan. So you're locked into a rate for assisted living and skilled nursing. So you wouldn't have to pay the 10, 11, $12,000. You would be locked into a lower rate, which is why people do it. But there's caveats to that too. You have to live there for at least a year. There are age caps. So if you are, I think, 85 or older, you don't qualify for the life care plan. So that would not be an option for you. There's even one place that if you use an outside home care service, that negates the buy-in. You don't get your money back.
Whoa.
And that's in terms of, yes, that's in their terms of service. Yes. And so this is why we don't work for the community, we work for the client. So we tell them all of this. I'm
I
not
feel
going to
like we
say
have to
yay or
pause there. I feel like we have to
yeah.
pause there because I don't even. Okay, so you said something, you said get your money back. So, okay, so let's retrace our steps a little bit. So the buy-in is almost, you mentioned it's like a long-term care policy. I love that analogy. It's also like buying a condo.
Yes.
And the difference is when you sell your condo, you get 100% of whatever those proceeds are. Whereas in the CCRC setting, you usually get a certain percentage of that back and only after they have resold your unit is
Almost always. Yes.
almost
There's only
always,
one
yes.
where they don't have to wait. But yes, I had a woman call me 2.5 years her mother had passed. They still didn't have their money back from their buy-in because they hadn't sold. It was a
Okay.
large unit.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, so let's pause. What's the caveat? When can you get it back right away?
It just depends on the community. And those are
Okay,
the
so
questions
it's just a
you know to
different
ask.
community.
What are
Gotcha.
your terms? Does it
Gotcha.
have to sell? Does the unit have to sell before I get my money back or my mom's money back? Or is there a cap? Some of them say as soon as it sells or 6 months. So if it
Okay.
takes more than 6 months, you're not waiting longer. So again, those are all questions to ask about
Gotcha.
the terms for the
Yeah,
buy-in because each
absolutely.
community is different.
Okay, absolutely. And so this buy-in option, the reason, right? So it's an option that you're basically like buying a condo, like buying long-term care. The reason there is an age cap is because if you think about it like a business, and I talk about this on the show all the time, right? Senior living is an industry. These are businesses. So as a business, the reason this is called a buy-in option is that they are taking your large sum of money and they are investing it. And that is
Correct.
how they are promising you that they will continue to provide care through end of life, no matter what your healthcare needs are at a lower monthly cost or in skilled nursing. If you need skilled nursing and you need it longer than what your insurance will cover, then they are
Mhm.
also picking up that bill. So that's the model for it. And you can look at it as an investment too, because like we're mentioning, you can get some of that money back when your loved one passes away or if you were to move out, depending on their terms,
Yes,
right? What
exactly.
their terms are. And so this can be an option. Um, you know, a lot of families will sell their home, take the proceeds, and
Hmm.
pay that large sum of money. But
Yes.
now, let's get back to the in-home care disqualification because I do not understand that.
Yes.
So,
I don't really understand that either. I think because this one particular CCRC has their own home care company on site. And so they're trying to promote that. But it's like a facility saying you can't choose your own hospice. We have one facility in our area that will not let you choose your own hospice. They only allow two companies, and it has to be one of the hospital hospices. So a lot of families I tour go, I don't like that. I want freedom of choice. I agree.
now
So it's still,
don't the Medicare laws cover freedom of choice?
you'd think so, but this one place has been around a long time.
Wow, isn't that interesting?
Mm,
Okay, so that's
yep.
something else. And again, I think everything we're talking about families wouldn't know to ask. And
Right.
Erin,
Because the
oh, go ahead.
But I was
Yeah.
going to say the facilities get contracts with the hospice companies. So from my experience, if it's a hospice company that they don't have a contract with yet, but the family already has a relationship, say mom already is on hospice or just got on hospice and home and they really like this company, and then we're moving mom, we have a discussion and the community will say, you know what, we don't have a contract with that hospice company yet, but I'm going to go call them and figure something out. I love that because the family wants
Nice.
the consistency. But if you're going to say, you know what, we don't contract with that company, we only contract with these two, then I wonder why. Is it just because it's easier for them? Do they get a kickback? I mean, again, this could be a whole web, but it just makes me
Rabbit
take
hole.
pause because, yes, considering the legislation I'm working on, it's all about family
Yeah.
choice. And I
Mhm.
think families and seniors should have choice. And if you're limiting the choices, then that's a problem. And that's why if you don't plan and it's a crisis, you have fewer choices. So I
Yeah.
love early planning so we can have mom move into a place that is something that she prefers and not just a last minute move to somewhere she is not comfortable with because that's the only option.
Yeah. And I want to pause here because you're my second interview state by state. And I realized we jumped in with finance, which is actually I think hugely important. But I kind of actually want to stop and let's restart. I don't mean like restart the whole show, but can you tell me what are the senior living and care options? Can you
Yeah,
list them
good
out?
idea. I'm glad you said that. Yep.
What are the
Yeah,
options in Missouri?
good. That is a great question. So we recently just had our first 55 plus active senior apartment community open up. So we have
Wow.
one of those now. Yes, it's awesome. And they will contract with us. Yay. So we don't have to
Ah,
families for that either. But yes, that is great. So we have that option now where there's no medical oversight. You don't even get meals, there's no transportation, but it's all 55 plus. There's pickleball court, there's bocce. Um, and I think they bring in some activities and live music. But what I love is on the bottom floor, they have a concierge doctor. So
oh,
you don't have to leave the apartment complex to go see, oh my gosh, is my blood pressure high? Can you check my blood sugar? I'm just not feeling right. So I love that.
wow.
They have a gym, they have a pool, they have covered
Wow.
parking. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. So we have that.
Okay.
And then the next down would be independent living, which again could be a buy-in or it can just be an apartment. It can be in terms of a buy-in, it can be a large apartment or it can be a villa or a condo type. So there are several options in Missouri for independent living. You can choose to do the apartment month to month as well. And then after independent living would be assisted living. So that's more care. Independent living, you could get 3 meals a day. Sometimes it's only two, sometimes it's only one, sometimes it's points. Again, it depends on the community. Assisted living, though, you're going to get 3 meals a day and snacks. You're going to get medication management. You're going to get transportation, weekly housekeeping, laundry, bathing, all of that in
Whatever
there.
you need. Yeah.
Whatever you need is involved. So then assisted living, then we have memory care, which is just a type of assisted living.
Yep.
There's more staff because there's cognitive impairment. And then Missouri has something called an IC or an intermediate care facility. So this is just a step below skilled, but a step above assisted living. So it offers pretty much what a skilled nursing can do, but in a non-medical setting. So you're going to have a regular looking apartment. You cannot be, bed bound usually. You at the end of life, you can obviously, but they don't like to bring in somebody that's completely bed bound right away. But they can deal with, ostomy bags and wound care. So it's a higher level, whereas assisted living would say, we really can't accommodate. In Missouri, we have this pathway to safety. So in assisted living, not in memory care, but in assisted living, you have to be able to exit the building in 5 minutes or less with only 2 prompts. They can't be wheeling you out. So if you need to be physically pushed out, they really don't accept. So if you're already in the building and you progress, then they have an ISP or individualized service plan where they accommodate for that. But they can only have so many people in the building that need to be physically taken out of the building in an emergency. So because they know the staff ratios.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a safety thing, but those are things they'll go over with you on the tour. So that's why they don't like to accept somebody right away that's wheelchair bound and bed bound, because that would mean they have to have a designated staff person in an emergency. So again, that's, so ICFs can accommodate more like that. And then there's skilled nursing. So that's your long term.
And then you guys also have adult family homes.
We do. We have some residential care homes.
You actually, now at the time that I researched it, which was like a couple of years ago, you had one family that had many homes. So
and now we have more.
You do have more. Okay.
Yep.
I love this. Now,
Yep.
Are those contracted and licensed as assisted living / memory care?
Yes.
Okay.
So for me, I lump them in with the assisted living and memory care, but yes, they are their own type, because you're having 8 to 10 residents in one care home, and so the staff ratios are much higher.
Okay.
But the price tag is going to be a little bit higher too. So we're seeing like $8,000 to $10,000 for a memory care home. But for me and for families, they love that that one-on-one. It's a home environment. They literally have communal dinners, and I love that.
Yeah.
And
Me too.
What's going on? Yeah, with the person, they can
Absolutely.
definitely tell changes.
Yes.
For sure.
So we have talked about the least expensive, the Medicaid type of option. We have talked about the most expensive. Wouldn't you agree the CCRC would be considered the most expensive because of the buy-in? Yeah.
Mm.
So now let's talk about that middle area. And you've already touched on it a little bit earlier. So if your mom is needing some assistance and you're looking at an assisted living community, you really can't go in heavy care. Like you really have to go into where your mom can wheel herself in her wheelchair. She can follow directions to get out of the building if there were an emergency. And so we're kind of back to that pre-planning, not just based on finances.
Yes.
But also based on care needs. And you, I guess, yeah. So what are the advantages to families, getting started and leaving home and moving into an independent that also has assisted / memory care? Because those are out there too.
Well, just in general, we're seeing families, couples, seniors staying in their homes a lot longer, where they've missed that boat on independent living, sometimes assisted living. And so they get shocked when they're like, well, I can just move in independent. And I'm like, well, you're 92 and 94 and your wife can't get out of the chair by herself. And
Yeah.
now she had, a UTI and cognitive issues, and she's, incontinent and all of these different things. You've definitely passed the independent living point, or maybe one of you is, but one of you is not. So that's where a CCRC is good, because you both could live on the same campus, but at different levels of care. Because if
Mm-hmm.
somebody is really truly independent and their wife is memory care or skilled, you really don't want to move to a memory care community when you don't need it.
Yep.
Because you're not gonna thrive.
And
And then
that's the
skilled,
spouse. And you're talking there about the
correct.
spouse that does not have cognitive issues, wanting
Correct.
to stay living with their loved one. Yeah.
Right. Right. There's not a lot of choices where there's a cognitively somebody with cognitive impairments and the other spouse does not. For them
Yeah.
to live together, it's challenging. And then skilled nursing, I mean, they're not going to let you live with somebody with skilled nursing if you're just like, well, I just want to live with my spouse.
No.
So those are the discussions. That's why you talk about this early. Plan A. Okay, we want to live together for the rest of our lives in this house. Okay. Plan B, we want to live together, but if we have to move out of the house, we want to stay in the same apartment or community. Okay. And then plan C, we have to separate. So
Yeah.
you really want time to plan all that through, because you don't know when a fall or a medical event might come into play where plan A and B are out the window.
Yeah.
So at least
Absolutely.
okay, well, plan C, at least we knew which facility we'd be okay with for mom then, or
Yeah.
my spouse.
And you can, I mean, getting on a wait list too is like, no, I mean, sometimes there's a fee to do that, but it's,
Usually
you
not.
don't have to take it if there's an opening. They're just,
Correct.
you're in the queue for them to
Yep.
call and say,
Right of
hey, there's
first
an
refusal.
opening, right?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
and I have to tell you, based on my listenership, most of the folks that are listening are younger. They're the ones that are going to be helping their family members, right? And so I think it's important to point out that you can go do this research even before you have the conversation, just to go get a feel, because you know your loved one better than anybody. And so I think advanced planning doesn't have to, sometimes we say those words and it sounds so overwhelming. Advanced planning. I don't know how much money my mom or dad has. Okay, well, that's okay. In Missouri, right? Can families tour the skilled nursing facilities?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
We make an appointment and we go see. And I really recommend that. And that's why if someone's in the hospital and they call me and they say, well, my mom's being discharged tomorrow, I'm like, we may not have time to go tour. So
That happens all
then
the
we have
time,
to,
by the way,
happens all the time.
in
Yes.
every state.
In every state. So it's like, that's why it's never too early to plan. So if we can plan ahead of time and we have time to work, like, yes, if we're talking 3 or 4 years out, a lot can change in that time. You're probably going to have to go back and retour because maybe they got bought out by a different company. So the culture's changed. But generally, you're going to know, okay, this is an okay skilled nursing, or no, I wouldn't we're sending me there. We're not sending mom there, because the hospital is just going to send you where there's an opening. So if you want choice, you have to go tour. So I always say, let's tour early and get a feeling of senior living, because there is such a misnomer that it's a convalescent home or that it's a nursing home. And I'm going to show you really nice apartments that I would even move in. There's a lot of places I just, I can't wait till I'm 55 that I could move in. So I want to show you so you have a sense, and that stigma from senior living is quelched a little bit. And you go, oh, this is what senior living is. Gosh, I wish I would have done this years ago. That's usually what you hear.
Exactly. Exactly. And I also love that you have the 55 plus, because there's just that added security as we age, and if you have health issues, it's good to get in to where you can feel safe, knowing that you have other people around you that are in the same boat, right? So I love that you have that. The independent living, so you have those two that are just independent living,
Correct.
just
Correct.
standalone. Okay.
Yep.
And so you're kind of looking at these moves as, just hoping that you can move for where you are in your life. And so you have the 55 plus, and then you have independent living where you, like you said, you get some meals, you get housekeeping, you get some of these things, and then assisted living, memory care, the step before skilled,
Yep.
which you called
ICFs.
ICFs,
ICF. Mhm.
and then you have skilled, and then residential care homes. Are they, do they also have ICF capabilities because of how small they are, or no?
Not that I've seen
Okay.
necessarily. You might be able to bring in like a private duty nurse. That
Okay.
would be a question when we tour. I usually ask them, is there anything that would cause somebody to have to move? One of the care homes said, no, we take you until you go to
Okay.
heaven. So to me, that says, yes, we can figure this out. But whether it's their
Yeah.
staff or they just allow private duty nurse to come in, again, that's questions you ask. But they're
That's
not
another great
licensed
point.
ICF though. They're not licensed ICF.
Okay. That is
Yep.
another good point though, is that yes, that you can have in-home care wherever you live. So
Correct.
except for that example of the CCRC that has their own, and then you have to
That
use
went
theirs.
by in
Okay.
applause.
Which
Yes.
I still
That's
don't
just one way.
understand. Yeah, exactly. But so so when we're talking about assisted living and memory care and now I think I know the answer on the skilled, but and the residential care homes, who's doing the assessment for the family?
The assessment before the have somebody move in would be the director of nursing or the assistant director of nursing. They would do the assessment to say you qualify for our home, our apartment, you're able to move in. And then that's when they would assess care levels if they have them. So not
So,
all
okay.
communities have care levels. Some are all inclusive, but some have care levels. So again, those are questions that we teach our clients, to ask if, obviously we're on the tour, so we're going to bring it up, but that is something that differentiates communities is it going to be the same amount every month or is it going to vary? Do I want to pay for all inclusive where maybe I don't use all the services? These are all the conversations we have with
Yeah.
our families.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it is possible if a family is deciding between more than one place that there is going to be more than one nurse assessment.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Each community will do their own.
Okay. Fun fact, Florida is done by a doctor. And I think the other one, there's another state. Oh my gosh, which state was it?
That's
There's another
interesting.
state. Was it Colorado? There was another state, or maybe Hawaii is done by the doctor. Not,
Wow.
yeah. Isn't that interesting?
But is it the doctor for the particular community or is it just
No, no,
one
no.
particular?
It is the family's
Oh,
primary care
I'm a
physician.
doc-
Their
Wow,
PCP is doing the assessment in those other
that's
states.
interesting.
Isn't that interesting? I thought that was
Well,
actually
yeah,
saves time for the communities. On the other hand, I I like that a community wants to know who they're taking care of intimately,
yeah,
right?
I do too.
I'm sure at some point they're getting all of the notes, the medical notes and all of that. But
Right.
so
Well, that's
yeah.
interesting because we did have a family where they were assessing because we were looking at a couple different options and they weren't
Mhm.
sure. So they had an assessment done by community A and community B, and they were actually quite different. And I don't know if it's because she was having a bad day on one of them, but we got, oh no, she should be in memory care. And another one said, no, she needs skilled. So having a doctor,
Interesting.
just one opinion
Who's
would have been better.
independent? Who is
Correct.
not tied to any of these places,
Correct.
because I have the last thing we want is for someone to do an assessment and then and say, "Oh yeah, come here, move in," and then the family goes through all that process of moving, and then 30 days later the community goes, or 2 weeks later the community goes, "Oh no, 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 we can't handle this. You know, you've got to
Yeah,
move." Well, that's us. That's
exactly.
the last. I actually had oh my gosh, I couldn't believe this. You know, but we're just the connectors. We're not the places. So we don't have any say. We can just advocate to the best of our ability, but
Mhm.
I had a nurse say, um, oh, oh, I don't need to see her. Yeah, this is what I think. It'll just be this based on what you're telling me. And I'm like, you don't want to meet and get doctor's information about the person you're
Right, lay
providing
eyes
care?
on this individual.
You don't want to at least get the doctor's notes? Like you don't want to see the medications? Like I'm so confused. So, but anyway, that's a whole nother story.
Mhm.
So Yeah,
Right.
so those are
Wow.
some of the differences, right? Okay, so do you have we've talked a lot. Did we cover everything? So I want to recap. I know there's so much. I want to recap. We've talked about what you have in Missouri, which are and again, everything's going to be in show notes, but you have the 55 plus now, love that.
Mhm. Yep.
Independent living, standalones, and then you have independent livings that also have assisted living,
Yep.
and you also have ones that have memory care too,
Correct.
all together. Then you
Mhm.
have what do you call your residential care homes?
Yeah, we call them, well, memory care homes. Usually they're having, somebody has cognitive impairment almost always. So we call them memory care homes, but residential care homes also
Yeah.
works.
They're a house. They're a
Yeah, they're
house. And I
hmm
love that. And then you have the step before the skilled nursing facilities, and then you have the skilled nursing facilities, and then you also have the CCRCs, which are the big campus that has everything I just said.
Yes.
Right.
That's why
And
this is confusing. There's a lot of options.
there are a lot of options. And so
Mhm.
let's talk about that a little bit because you are someone who is a connector. And a lot of times, part of the education that I'm doing with the podcast is that families don't even know that we exist, someone
Correct.
who can help them find these options. And so, what would you say for a family that is looking for care in Missouri? What is the number one obstacle that you see families struggle with?
Um, Finances. I mean,
Mm,
when I hate to be the bearer of bad news and I say, please don't shoot the messenger when they say, oh, Medicare or Medicaid, because they too get confused. Medicare and Medicaid cover assisted living, right? Hmm. Don't shoot me. And then they go, well, what? I mean, and sometimes they get angry. Well, what am I supposed to do with mom? And I'm like, move her in your home. I
I'd
don't
be angry too. I know.
like, I'm sorry I didn't create the problem, but that's the worst thing is the planning, the finances, that there's such a hole there. Our regulations in Missouri, our state regulations are very tight, which is good for us. It's good for the clients because that means that it's very strict, but it's hard for the communities. So they have to work around that. But I'd rather have it that way than the opposite. But having said that, there are assisted livings that they can be licensed assisted living, and they can take a certain individual with a certain condition or, a two-person transfer, for example, but they choose not to. We're at the discretion of what the community says. They can say yay or nay. Same with the skilled nursing. They can say yay or nay. Even though in their licensure, they can take somebody with a trach, they may say no. With a feeding tube, they may say no. So this is
Wow.
where it does get frustrating, but I also would rather them say no than accept my client and drop the ball. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping they're saying it not to be picky, but because they know their staff right now and they know the levels of care needed for their other residents and that they're doing due diligence. I just keep telling myself that I hope it's not that, and then being
Yeah.
picky and being like, oh, we really don't feel like, somebody that has that condition.
Yeah.
But again, that's what I tell families. It's not up to me
Yeah.
whether they accept. It's up to
Hmm.
the community based on the notes, based on the assessment. And
Yeah.
I also say, please be as forthright as you can because they will find out. So if you didn't tell something about mom, they're going to find out. And you'd rather find out ahead of time than
Yeah.
after when they kick you out or something.
Yeah. I have a whole episode on
Okay, good.
that. Yeah. Yeah. Because I've experienced it. You'd think it's, first of all, it's hard. Like we've said, it's hard to talk about. And you think, some of these symptoms are embarrassing. You don't want, it's not fun to talk about, like we said before. So yeah,
Mhm.
and so, we mentioned this at the top of the show. Missouri is not alone. Missouri is not the only state that has limited options for those that have financial concerns. Let me ask you this question. How far away has a family had to go because they didn't have the money?
Oh, well, I think of one case where, and it was an unfortunate case where they actually weren't a senior. They were early 30s, but it was a
Oh,
traumatic brain injury. But because it happened after 26, he wasn't considered developmentally disabled. So the amount of resources for him were limited. He was also on Medicaid, and the parents were actually open to any state, and it was like any state, like even Alaska, like they were open to any state because they couldn't do
Wow.
it anymore. That was pretty sad. That was very challenging. But I would say just typically the furthest, you know, 45 minutes to an hour. I mean, luckily we have, being in St. Louis, we have a lot of, more rural area. So that's where I always look. If there's a constraint financially, I have to manage expectations.
Mm.
If you tell me you only want West County, you only want a 1 bedroom, and you only have $3,500 or 4,000 to spend on assisted living, I'm going to say, well, we're going to have to expand our geographic area. I cannot create a unicorn. Like I can't find a unicorn if it doesn't exist. So I have to be transparent and I have to manage expectations. If I say, is it about the care or is it about the convenience or about the budget? Like what's the most important? If they say the best care and we don't care where it is, it's more important about the budget and the care. I go, okay. So are you willing to drive 45 minutes an hour? Oh yeah. But if they say no, really driving is most important, I'm going to say, well, then we have to expand our financial budget. So
Mm-hmm.
we have those conversations. I'm like, what
Yeah.
is your, limit and what's your
Mm-hmm.
preferred stipulation on mom's care or on your own care? So it's that's why we sit down with families because every family is unique.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say yeah, I mean, I would say that is true of these states that don't have as many resources, is that you have to give up on something on your list, right?
Yes.
Maybe it's going from a 1 bedroom to a studio,
Right.
because of the finances. So, there is that sort of play that you might have to have.
Mhm.
I think the other struggle, and where I hope this episode can really help families, is the research process. When families usually today start researching, it's a couple of different directions, right? They're either asking a family member or a coworker or somebody has said, oh,
Mhm.
you should try this place where my mom is,
Yep.
but not diving deeper to find out how much that place costs, or
Right.
what they offer, what they can
Yes.
and can't do. The other place that probably more families go to is the internet.
Yes. Facebook,
So
especially, I see that a lot.
let's talk about that. So,
Please, let's
what,
do.
yeah. So, what are the pitfalls for Missouri that families are facing when they hit the internet?
Yes. Well, I just actually hit this. So I try to keep tabs on the Facebook groups. But somebody, and I really don't like when they ask this, but they blanketly ask, hey, what's a good assisted living in the greater St. Louis area?
Can I stop you
Well,
there, Erin? Because
what's good?
right. I have to
What's
stop you
good?
there. I'm so sorry, because that is the limit of their knowledge, though. That's the limit of their knowledge. They have no idea, because this is a whole industry, right?
Yep.
Families have no idea. So you're saying, man, I hate that question. We hate it because we know the the
It's a
vastness.
loaded question.
It's a loaded question, but they
Yep.
have no idea. Okay, so go ahead.
Correct. No, they just truly don't know. And so I get on there and I say, well, most people say, please use, a local advisor, which I love. I thumbs up. I'm like, please use my colleagues. If you don't use me, that's fine, but please use one of my colleagues because
Yeah.
you really need this navigated by somebody. But you do see answers like, well, such and such was great for my mom. And then you see a comment like two below it go, oh no, don't go there. They were horrible for my grandpa. And
Oh,
that's the answers you're going to get. First of all, the answer the first person gave was a locally owned, family operated that has like 30 locations. So the one that she experienced for her grandma that was great is different. And who knows, was that in the 80s or was that like last year? So again, I don't like those answers because it doesn't answer the question. There's so many more questions that I have. So answering the question actually raises more questions. But then you go down the street and the other community, might not be as good as the one that grandma was at because they're different. So again, it is a loaded question, but I get on there and sometimes I just write a whole paragraph. I write about the legislation we're working on and why you have to be careful online. You
Yeah, so
know,
let's talk about the online searching. And um, in the introduction that I gave for this episode, I do mention your legislation and so, or the work that you're doing in the government. So I want to talk about that too. Because it is specific to Missouri and it's so important. I'm so glad to see so many states starting to do this. So, okay, so let's talk about what is going to happen when a family jumps online and they Google assisted living or my mom needs more care in Missouri. What's going to happen?
more often than not, you are going to be on a lead aggregator site, and it's not going to be, Brookdale's site or Sunrise's site or Atria's site. You're going to be getting a lead aggregator because they own hundreds and hundreds of websites, whereas Brookdale only owns like three. So just think about the sheer numbers, 100 versus three. Who are you going to get? Who's going to populate most? So you're going to be on a website that at first you think is another community's website, and it's not. So it's going to be an online referral source that in order to get any information about availability or pricing, you're going to have to put in your contact information. What I don't think is how this can be legal is that anybody can fill out information for a senior. You don't have to be the
Mm,
power of attorney. This could be a well-meaning neighbor. It could be a stranger. It could be, you just met once.
yep.
It doesn't have to be the power of attorney or the client themselves. So how in the world can someone fill out information and put that senior into a contract with them for 2 to 5 years? How can they be represented by an online lead aggregator if they themselves never signed anything, if they themselves didn't put their information in?
Or their power of attorney.
Or their power of attorney. And that has happened where the senior had no idea that daughter-in-law just got a bug and decided, okay, I'm going to go online and put my mother-in-law's information everywhere. That she did not give permission for that. She did not know that.
Yep.
So how can she make that decision? But that's how it is, because these online lead aggregators call themselves marketing groups, marketing companies. Again, back to we need a designation or a license or something. These are not certified senior advisors like you and me. These are not people that belong to NPRA and have ethics, checked out. And there's no standardization like, say, a realtor. So there's no standardization of practice or ethics. Most of the time they don't even go on tours with these people because we don't have a local lead aggregator. They are 4 hours away. So that means there's no way if someone puts something online in St. Louis that someone's going to go with them to those tours. They're just setting up the tours.
Which
And I've
means
had
a list. You're just getting a
correct,
list. Yeah.
correct. You're literally just getting an emailed list of try these places. And most times they don't even match up to the person's care needs or finances or geographic area. So that's wasting the family's time. It's also wasting the salespeople's time at the community because
Mhm.
they're going to say, wait a minute, you live in Cape Girardeau, which is, hours away from us. Why would you be sent here?
Oh, sorry,
You
my phone is ringing. Oopsie. So let's go back. Say that again.
um, I forgot what I just said.
I know. So why,
Oh,
a local, your local,
yes.
I
Yes.
love, by the way, the word you're calling it, because
I'm trying to be careful.
you and I both know there's a company name and there's more than one. Actually,
Egg.
what families don't know is that this one very popular company name actually owns a whole bunch of online
Correct.
aggregate companies.
Yep. There's two main ones. Yeah. Lead aggregators.
Lead
Yes. But
aggregators.
at least in my area, they are not local.
So they have started to bring back more local people, I think because of the bad reputation that they've had. So
Mhm.
in Washington State, I've seen a resurgence of
Ah,
more of the local folks. And I want to pause here because, listen, it's not going to take a rocket science for someone to figure out who we're talking about. A
mhm.
rocket scientist to figure out who we're talking about.
I know
So
what
I
you
want
mean.
to pause here to say that I have met people who had a good experience through this site. And just like on every single website you go to, no one is going to put their bad reviews on their website,
Correct.
right?
Correct. And
So
we actually have that in our legislation that they pick and choose the reviews.
everybody does. Every website, everybody, the financial advisor you want to go to, they're going to
I don't.
who's going to put their bad reviews on there, right?
True, but yeah.
I mean, now it's a different story to say they're cleaning up their Google reviews or they're cleaning up their Yelp reviews. Okay, that's different.
Well,
I have right. That's a whole different thing.
whole thing. Yeah.
I have the sweetest 80-something-year-old client who was not happy with me because he was asking for the sun and moon and stars, and I could only give him the stars. And so he gave me like a 4-star review. He broke my 5-star record. and his son and I laughed about it so much. But if they're cleaning things up, yeah, that's a different story. Absolutely.
Right.
So, but I just want to point out that there's a bigger problem here. And you know this because of the legislation that you're doing.
Yes.
And the bigger problem is that they are only showing families places they have contracts with. And families are missing out on potential opportunities that might be a better fit. And
Yes.
so that's a problem. And the other problem too that I have run into is that if you have any bit of money, those online aggregate companies are going to try to get you to spend that money, even when it may not be in your best interest or your loved one's best interest.
Right.
And
they're not fiduciary. Yep.
They are not fiduciary. And
Correct.
so these are things that and I want to, while we're talking about it, point out another problem when you go onto Google is what you already said. You're not reaching who you thought you wanted to reach. And so, and how hasn't this happened to you, Erin? It's happened to me. It
Yes.
actually just happened to me and I had no idea. Okay.
Side
note, PSA. I might edit this out, but I was traveling. I purchased my rental car through Expedia. I purchased the rental car insurance. Okay, maybe I've had an accident or two, whatever. Small, tiny little things. But I was like, okay, I'm going to do the insurance. And something did happen to my car, but it wasn't my fault. It was already there. And they did the rollback on the cameras on the lot and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But when I told the person at the rental car company that I had insurance, they said, no, you don't. And I'm like, well, yeah, I paid for it. And they said, you paid Expedia. We still have to go through your insurance. That's Expedia. That's separate. That's not us. No. And I was like, how would I know that? So your coworker says, I think you should check out this assisted living. They're really great. My mom's there now and she loves it. And you go online to Google that community, there is a very large possibility that you are not going to reach that community. And then here's what's so frustrating is that you're telling your whole story. You're overwhelmed. And if that online aggregate, I love your words, if they don't have a contract with that community, they're going to tell you that that community is not available to you. And you're not going to know that what they mean is they don't have a contract. In your mind, you're going to process and go, oh, they must be full.
Yes. That actually happened to me with one of my clients. It
wow.
really did. Yes.
Okay.
Where she was unfortunately online. And then she called me and she said, I'm not really getting good feedback. Her mom was diagnosed with dementia and her dad was the caregiver and he died suddenly. And so she's scrambling to bury him and figure out what she's going to do with mom. She works full time. And she called me and she goes, you came highly recommended. But she said, unfortunately, I went online and got involved with one of these online lead aggregators. How do I get out? And I said, well, there's an opt-out form. I said, we have no legislation or regulation in Missouri yet. I said, but here's the online form. You can try that. She goes, well, this woman who doesn't even live in the state signed me up for 3 tours on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are the worst day for me for work. She didn't even check with me to see if I'm available. She also didn't check with the communities. So she had a community call the client. So the daughter of the client called and said, we don't even have a salesperson that day. We don't know why this online lead aggregator made an appointment for you. And so the client's daughter is saying, I don't know why either. So she didn't even check with the communities. She didn't check with me. So what did she do? So she asked me, can you please cancel these 3 appointments? I said, I cannot cancel another advisor's appointments. I can't do that. And so I said, you need to call her and ask her to cancel them. She said, no. So then the client's daughter said, well, I'm just not going to show up then. And I
Wait,
said,
the
I
aggregate
understand.
said no, she's not canceling the appointments?
Yep. She said, no. She goes, if you really don't want to go, you have to call the communities. So
What?
this woman was so aggravated and she's mourning the loss of her dad. She's stressed out beyond belief. And she said, well, then I'm just not going to show up at the communities. And my thought went 2 ways. I was like, I understand how she feels, but I also said that's not the fault of the communities. So if you just don't go to the other 2 appointments where they actually had salespeople, I'm like, I feel for them because that's not their fault either. I said,
Yeah.
so I would not do that. I said, call back again. And if you, I mean, again, I can't really get involved, but I'm like, be adamant and say, look, I filled out this opt-out form. I don't want you representing me. You're canceling these, or I'm just going to not show up and that's going to look bad on you. So she finally canceled them. But when
Wow.
we started talking, I said, would you send me the email that shows where she was going to send you? She goes, so she sends me the email and I'm looking and I'm thinking, okay, your mom has dementia. You're talking about wanting like lower staff ratios. Where you live made a lot of sense. I was like, why did they not choose this residential care home?
Mm.
And she goes, oh, I bet I know why. Probably because they don't have a contract. Even the daughter knew this. And I was like, you're right. So we looked
Wow.
at 2 different care homes plus another one that they didn't have contracts with. And she ended up going with a smaller care home and she was so happy. But there we go.
Wow.
That was an example of she didn't even get shown any smaller care homes because they're smaller. So they're not going to contract with these big, because the fees are so much for them. So they're not going to
Well,
contract with these online lead aggregators sometimes.
yes, that's exactly right. They charge a fee
Yeah.
for the relationship and then they lock the family up. They lock that name. In
They
some
do.
cases, I have had communities share with me that the contract states they're not only locked in for that city, like let's say it was St. Louis County, they're locked in for the whole state of Missouri. Like they're locked down. And it's like, how is this okay? So tell us a
Right.
little bit about your legislation. What are you
Sure.
working on?
So we've been working on this for 2 years now, but it's called it's Missouri House Bill 390, and it's the Family Choice Act, but we're putting it under like a consumer affairs bill because we believe the right to privacy online, your information, it does get shared. So that's the problem with going online, is that it's going to be shared, like you said, possibly the whole state or more, but also the right to choose your representation. If you don't like your doctor, you can fire your doctor. If you don't like your realtor, you can fire your realtor. So why is that any different? If you're like, well, I filled out something online and I want a more hands-on concierge approach. I want Valerie or I want Erin or anybody else to work with me. They should have that right, especially if their information was put into a system by somebody else that wasn't them. They didn't give permission. That's not the POA. That's not them. How can that stand? That's what we're fighting right now.
Yep.
We passed the Senate. We're in the I'm sorry, we passed the House and we're waiting for the Senate right now. So we testified last week. We're going to testify again here in a couple weeks. But I learned today that somebody that I know very well who's writing a testimony in support of our bill, she ran a building for years. She had an assisted living memory care. And she said one of these lead aggregators, she goes, in my years of working there, she goes, not one tour showed up of this one particular lead aggregator. She goes, never did we have a tour show up. So
Yeah.
when we got on leads from this one lead aggregator, nobody ever came up. Nobody ever came to tour. So therefore, think about all the wasted time those salespeople wasted.
And the
So
families.
and the family, yeah. So it's like, I don't know why the families didn't end up touring, but again, that shows you the breakdown. But does
Yeah.
that happen with us? No, we're there with them. So the tours
Yep.
are happening. But to hear that, so she's writing that in her testimonial. So that's just another
Wow.
side to the business that they don't even check with the communities, or it's just a waste of time.
Yeah.
The lead conversion is not good.
Yep.
Because they're not sending them proper leads.
Yeah.
Whereas with us, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I love what you're doing, and we should say you are fighting a fight that has been going on for a long time, because can you share the story, and of course you don't have to name names, but can you share the story of the prominent family that got tied up in this online aggregate system and ended up
Yes,
taking it to court?
and this is why we are where we are. It took a good friend of a House of Representatives representative for this to really get going, because we were dealing with it before and people were like, yeah, yeah. But until it hit home for Representative Filamato, who's backing our bill, it was good friends of theirs that were our clients. The son or the daughter, I can't remember, I think it was the son, had gone online and was like, okay, well, mom needs care, I'm just going to get on there. And the next thing he knows, he's getting like 30 sales calls. And he's like, what? Leave me alone. And so it was just such this process. And can I get out of it? Nope. You put in the information. We're going to, so he couldn't get these calls to stop. He was, feeling harassed, and, the things they were sending him just, it didn't make sense. The communities, he's like, I just don't like this. I can't opt out, blah, blah, blah. So the Representative Filamato was listening, and he said, wait, what? Tell me about this. What's a online lead aggregator? What do placement agents do? I'm so confused. So he learned, it was like trial by fire. He learned all of this.
Yeah.
And that's why, we ended up getting connected, and he was a freshman. So he's like, okay, well, so far I've made no enemies, so let's go with this. It's a bipartisan, bill. So yeah, he took it and ran. Myself and my counterpart, Jeff, we helped, write the bill. We based it on the language in Colorado, which did pass.
Nice.
The Family Choice Act in Colorado. So we based it on that. We hired a lobbyist this year. So we're paying out of our own pocket. I mean, we are getting support from MPRA. We've asked a few communities, but most of it's coming out of our own pockets. That's how passionate we are about this.
Wow.
So we're going to be doing a fundraiser, hopefully in the spring or early summer, to help offset the cost, because lobbyists are not cheap. But we've been told it's never passed without a lobbyist. So we feel like to get traction, we really need lobbyists. So we hired him, and he's been great so far. So we're really hoping this next session goes well. But again, I don't know if it's going to pass this session, or if we'll have to go through another one or not.
Yeah, I love that. I love the work that you're doing. And I want to touch more on NPRA and CSA that you mentioned earlier, because I think what the bigger picture, I mean, I don't know, it's also important, but these online aggravates, they are aggravating.
Freudian slip, I love it. Play on words.
These online aggregates are acting as placement advisors.
Correct.
But because they're calling themselves marketers, like in the state of Washington, we are regulated. Placement advisors are regulated, but the online aggregates don't have to follow our regulations because they are calling themselves marketers. But let's be very clear. They are acting as placement advisors. That is exactly what they're doing. And so I think that this is, again, we're back to, this is something that families are in a vulnerable spot. We've already talked about how there is a large percentage of families that wait until there's a crisis. So now they're in crisis mode. They are completely overwhelmed. We have a high rate of sandwich caregivers who are taking care of littles, and they are taking care of their parents or other elder loved ones, or sometimes just a neighbor. And so we are facing a crisis on such a large level. And this is where I think when we talk about certification and how people that do what you and I do are anywhere in the US are not there is no certification to do what we do. And so this is, I think, also leads into how you can have online companies coming in, just, and having these practices that are, I don't think, very ethical. And so what I love, let's talk a little bit about CSA, MPRA, because quite frankly, I am a huge advocate for these organizations. I feel like, especially with the CSA, that test was so difficult. And I feel like we have a certification. It's just waiting. And I am not getting paid by CSA, right? Like, but it's there.
Right. No, me either.
It's in place. It is there. And it would be so easy if there was legislation also passed that said, okay, people that do what we do, handling federally protected financial and healthcare information, that we have to be certified. But here's the good thing. The good thing is that these organizations do have some lobbyists, right? And this is something that they've been working on for years as well. So there are people out here advocating for families. And let's be honest, really advocating for the industry as a whole, because
Right.
if we fix these things, we're just raising the bar in the industry.
Mhm.
And so these people are out there. And so I would say, just as another, and I hope I'm not taking away your doable tip, but you know,
I didn't think about
I know
that.
you got to think of a doable tip. Come on, you're on my show, Erin. This is your third time on my show. You have to have a doable tip. But
I'm an amateur here.
no, you're a pro. So, but here's the thing: if you're a family member, here's what is so cool is that you can go on the MPRA website. And again, all these links will be in show notes. You can go on the CSA website, that's Certified Senior Advisors. That is the National Placement and Referral Alliance, not the Rodeo Alliance.
No.
Have you put an MPRA? There's also an MPRA, and it's the rodeo, and I love that.
Yes.
But you can
It's
go
funny.
to these two, and you can search for a placement referral and placement specialist. Now, I'm going to give you a tip on this search because I actually I help families all over the U.S. I was working with a family in Tennessee, and we discovered this. You want to not worry about the designation in the search bar. Just search your state or your city. If you're in a, like, let's say you're in St. Louis, just put Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri in, and then visually scroll through until you find referral and placement. And the
Yes,
reason
it's much
is that,
easier.
yeah, well, it also in Tennessee, nobody came up. And I was like, how are there no CSAs in the whole state of Tennessee? So there's some sort of glitch in there. So I just want to, yeah. So just search and then scroll and look for the words referral and placement. But you're going to get some other great stuff if you need a financial advisor, if you need an elder law attorney. So, and the great thing about doing this, finding someone like me and of course, obviously, Erin and I can help you. Erin can help you in Missouri. I can help you wherever you're at. And so, however you're searching, when you find someone who's a CSA or they're an MPRA, we have to do continuing education.
Yes.
We are governed by background checks. We are governed by ethics. So you're getting someone who at least has that. Now, listen, there's bad apples in every barrel. That's not what we're saying. But you can interview those folks and find someone that matches. And then also, guess what? If you do get a bad apple, you can report them to these organizations. We'll be investigated. You have some ground there. And so I think that is also so important. And Erin, I'm going to give you another minute to think of your doable tip because I want to let you know. I am so excited by this conversation that we're having about your legislation and how important it is. I'm going to take this part of our interview out and I'm going to make it a short as well because this is so important and the work that you're doing is just so incredible. And so, okay, Erin, what would be your number one doable tip for families that are looking for senior living and care in the state of Missouri, other than calling you?
Other than calling me. It's kind of a twofold tip based on what we were just talking about with legislation and protecting your privacy online. I am all for education. I am all for doing it yourself, for research, even on the internet. But the caveat is, please, if you need to get more information than what's being provided online and it requires you to put in your name and phone number or name and email, please don't do it. Just, because that's going to log you into something for many years and you're going to be harassed. So if you need to get more information than what's provided, please don't put in your information, your contact information. But you can go on, it's the Department of Health and Senior Services, or DHSS. This is the state website where you can look up the state surveys. Now, independent living is not state regulated. So
I'm so glad you're bringing this up, by the way. Yes, I meant to ask you this question.
Yeah. So I would have been, anyway, we're tying it around. Independent living is not state regulated. So if it's a standalone independent living, it's not going to come up. But if they have assisted living or memory care, or any other, forms of higher level of care on campus, then it will be in there. So assisted living, memory care, ICFs and SNFs, skilled nursing facilities, will all be on there. So you're able to look up their state reports and surveys and see, oh my goodness, where's there neglect or abuse? How is it handled? Or was the report really just a fire alarm wasn't checked that month?
Mhm.
Because there is a difference. I mean, it's all reported, but I read through them and I go, I'm going to let you know, family, they have a citation, but it was for a fire alarm, or there was too many things under the stairs and it was a fire hazard that got removed immediately, versus, someone who was wheeled out to go smoking and they didn't put a smoking apron on them and they got burned. Again, I'm
Yep.
going to let you know
Yep.
all of it because it's your decision, not mine, but I want you to have all the education. So families can look those up themselves.
Yep.
And also, if they go into a community and ask for that, they are required to give them the state report. So if you don't have the internet, for example, or you just wanted to, you can go in. So just stop by and say, hey, can I see a copy of your state report?
Yep.
They have to give it. So
I love it.
long tip. I'm sorry. Like a twofold, but
That's great. I'm so glad that was your tip, because we didn't talk about that, and you had mentioned the state, and it was one of those things I wanted to come back to. But that's why I love having you on the show. Well, that's why, side note, I love you anyway. But right
back
is
at you.
is right, because it's like you're so knowledgeable, and this is, I on another side note, for me personally, I don't provide. Oh my gosh, hi.
Scarlett.
Hi.
Hello. Therapy dog Scarlett wants to say hello.
Love Scarlett. Hi,
I gotta see your
Scarlett.
home.
Hi,
No.
Scarlett. Aw.
Look. All right.
Hi.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
All right. Thanks. Oh, boy. Sorry for that.
No,
It's dinner
no,
time.
that's
She's
fine.
getting cookies.
Oh, that's true. The time change. But that's so funny. But what was I gonna say? I don't even know what I was saying.
Sorry. Yeah, the dog caused you to.
I know, that was awesome. I
You
love
like, I
dogs.
love talking to you, but I guess because we eventually get there, maybe. I don't.
No, I was gonna say something else. Gosh darn it. But um I don't always show all of that information to families. So what I tell families is I'm reviewing it, I'm going
Mhm.
on there, and then if there is something that, like, I
Oh
don't
yeah.
usually bring
I
it
give
up
them a
as
snippet.
if there's something, the only time I really bring it into play is if they like a place, it's the only option. They don't have a lot of options. And then I'm like, oh, I need to show you what I found online. Let
Yeah.
you be the judge. In Washington State, we have so many options that I'm actually able to pass over places that have bad reports. So we don't even get to that
It's not
conversation
even
so
an
much
issue.
of the
That's
time,
great.
because we have so many options here. And this is
Good.
honestly, I would love to see every state have the options we have. I
Mhm.
mean, honestly, if I moved back to St. Louis, which I'm considering, if I
Mhm.
moved back there, I I would probably be like, "Hey kid, send me back." Hey Caleb, right? Send me back to Washington State when I need assisted living, because
Right.
there are so many options here, and we can spend down to Medicaid. We can put my money in a trust and spend down to Medicaid, and whatever. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And that's the thing. It's every state. And that's what's interesting. People have said to me, why can't we lobby for this on a federal level? I said, I wish we could, but it's not. It's state by state. Just like the regulations are state by state, just like Medicaid is different. I'm like, I know. It's almost
totally
like by design,
wish.
it's tricky and difficult, which is a good thing for us and what we do, because families need us and they need us
Yeah.
to advocate for them and to educate them and break it down, because it's very overwhelming. I mean, I'm 7 years in and I learned something about Medicaid the other day. Somebody said it's actually illegal to require, and again, I'm asking for a Medicaid expert to come in because I really don't know. I've been told two different things, that it's illegal for a community that has Medicaid and private pay to require that person that's like in the spend down phase or going to get on Medicaid to pay privately for a period of time. I've been told that's illegal. I'm like, well, I know many places that do it. So how is it illegal if I can count off 5 places that I know that do it, that take private pay and Medicaid, and they make the person privately pay until there's a Medicaid bed open? If that's
I've
illegal,
never
how is it happening?
It's
I
happening in
never heard that
Washington
until
State.
last week.
Here's the caveat, and maybe this is where it gets confusing for the Medicaid person, is that the caveat is that these families that are spending down would not qualify for Medicaid. You
Right.
can't. So the communities that are doing the spend down, they're not guaranteeing Medicaid. It's two separate things. It's completely two separate things. They're just saying we require this year of private funding before we'll accept Medicaid, but the family still has to separately qualify their loved one for Medicaid.
Right.
And the other thing that is in Washington state is that families can contribute for something special. So your loved one can be getting Medicaid and beyond Medicaid, but you want that one bedroom. You don't want them to have to only have a studio. And so they
Or
allow
share.
families to actually contribute.
Contribute. Oh, interesting.
And that's allowed. Now, you cannot put that money, you can't commingle funds. You can't put that money with your loved one's money. You have to pay that
It's
separately.
two separate transactions.
It may be in Missouri. I don't know, right? Like this is the thing that's so confusing for everybody. And you know what? Honestly, Erin, this is why it's so hard to pass legislation. This is why, because it's the wild, wild west out here, and nobody realizes it until it's too late. And let's be very clear, even that, that representative, your representative, it was his friend. If it would have been your representative, I wonder how much bandwidth he would have had left after going through all of that to even pursue it.
Right. He wouldn't. I mean, because he had a bunch of other things going.
He'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm done.
Right. To try to get it in with another bill. But yeah, exactly. It took a personal experience. And I'm like, my team and I have tons of personal experiences. I actually just did a Zoom with a woman that owns a home care company. And she said she got involved with one of these lead aggregators to get leads for her home care company. So not placement. And she said, even though this one client ended up not qualifying and like they didn't even really use their services for some reason, she still got charged. And when she called them to say, hey, they didn't even use our services, they're like, too bad. She still had to pay.
What?
How is that? Exactly. Like, and that's a home care company.
Wow.
So that's a whole other side that they have the home care companies too. They're all over.
Can I just tell you, this happened to me I have to plug you in. My laptop is dying. This just happened to me. I had no idea. I needed help with my, website or something. And I entered my information into, it wasn't Fiverr. It was a different site to look for somebody. Only I thought it was going to be like Fiverr where they show you the people and then you pick
and choose.
It wasn't. This was a totally different company. And I put in my information looking for this computer website person, and my phone and email blew up. And I knew better. I knew better, but I thought it was going to be like Fiverr. It wasn't like Fiverr. And I don't remember. I wish I could remember what it was called. But these people were blowing me up. Now, what was happening is then I got frustrated and then I didn't want to hire anybody. But then this happened. I started getting emails saying, hey, I paid for your lead.
What?
Hey, I paid for your lead. So that's what's happening. That's what happened to that in-home care person is that they are required to pay for the lead whether or not I sign up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they're doing. They're running it like these tech places are running it. Like Fiverr is different, but maybe it's not different. Maybe the tech person has to pay to be on Fiverr. I don't know. That's what's happening. I don't know how that works. That's what's happening. So they are having to pay. But I think where it gets tricky is healthcare. We're talking healthcare here. And that's where I think there should be some different laws.
Right.
There
it's
should
not
be
like
some
an
different
auto
rules.
quote where I go online. I'm like, oh crap. Now I have 20 emails and
yeah.
It's, it's just, and especially considering the delicate situation that these folks are going through. But I have to tell you, in legislation, in the testimony of last week, Jeff did something brilliant. So sent not their like local peon from Kansas City.
Wait, I'm sorry. Bleep. You mean the online aggregate? Yeah.
Okay. The online lead aggregate they sent one of their top people, one of the high execs. Okay. And she lied 4 times in the hearing. 4. She said, if this bill passes, that placement will no longer be free to families. Where did we put that in our bill? No, you're making things up. So I said to Jeff, I said, well, what happens to somebody who lies in front of committee? Because I don't know. So he had to go after her, and he's sitting there kind of like, I know. And so I guess the woman next to him was like, you can't get up and say she's a liar. You cannot call her a liar. He's like, I know. And so he gets his wits about him. He goes up there, and I guess she had kept going on and on about how great their website is, and it's all inclusive and all encompassing. And that's the only thing you need is their website, and you don't need any other placement agents and blah, 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 just going on and on. So he's brilliant. And he goes, okay. He goes, I want you all of you House of Representatives, to pull out your phones. I want you to go on her website right now. I want you to fill it out. They got calls, 3 to one woman in the session. She was literally putting her hands up. There's a video. And I guess she was literally going, 3. I got 3. So they got to see how they harass people. And she's just like, because until you do it, you don't know. Yep. So, and these are all people in the legislature that probably don't have loved ones going through this. They're just working. Okay. But imagine that's that person that dad just died. He was the caregiver for mom. I am trying to work. I'm trying to figure out mom now because this all happened. I'm grieving. And now I'm getting blown up on my phone and email.
Yep.
And I can't get out of it. And they make tours for me and I can't get out of them. That's horrible. Yep. So it was brilliant that he literally showed how it works.
Wow. Good for him.
Good for him. Yeah, he did a really good job. So
we're
just waiting on the next one, which I think is end of March. But we're going to have family testimonials. We're going to have community testimonials to really pack in the punch for that.
Thank you for all you are doing. I wish, girl, we could talk forever. I wish that, I hope that this is passed. I hope that you guys are successful.
Pray and hope as well.
And I hope that every state can make this happen.
Today's episode is brought to you by ClearPath Senior Living Solutions. ClearPath helps families find assisted living, memory care, and other resources. Find our contact information in today's show notes. Check out this episode's doable download in show notes for details including industry terms and definitions we discussed, as well as a bonus tip from our guest. Have questions or your own tips to share? Leave us a message. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, make it doable.